They didn't see it coming. Not the geologists, not the survivalists, not even your paranoid uncle who's been stockpiling canned beans since Y2K. 1 minute, everything was normal. The next, every volcano on Earth erupted at the exact same time. Not one by one, not gradually, but as if Earth sneezed magma. Welcome back to What If Horizons, the podcast where scientific plausibility and sheer panic hold hands and dance around the flaming dumpster fire of imagination. So, all volcanoes at once. Let's just take a moment to appreciate how utterly, profoundly screwed we'd be. Earth, that mellow blue marble floating in space like a Zen monk on Xanax, would instantly transform into a Michael Bay fever dream. There are roughly 1,500 active volcanoes on land, not counting the tens of thousands dotting the ocean floor, quietly bubbling like they're cooking some unspeakable cosmic stew. Now imagine all of them deciding, you know what? Today's the day. The first thing you'd notice isn't lava or ash. It's the noise. Not just a boom, but a global growl. The Earth's crust cracking in stereo. Mountains exploding like popcorn. Cities falling silent as the background hum of civilization is drowned in the guttural roar of a planet clearing its throat with fire. Immediately, our air travel industry becomes a quaint historical anecdote. Ash plumes shoot into the sky at a velocity that makes supersonic jets look like toddlers in pedal cars. Airports shut down. Flights vanish mid-route. Somewhere over the Pacific, a pilot screams into static as his engines choke on pulverized rock and melted dreams. And don't even get me started on the people near the volcanoes. I mean, sure, some live in places called Ring of Fire and shrug off lava flows like bad traffic. But even the most lava-seasoned communities are not ready for Krakatoa, Vesuvius, Yellowstone, Mount Fuji, and every Icelandic fissure to go off like synchronized swimmers from hell. No early warning system is built for this. No evacuation route covers all of Earth. Sirens blare. People panic. Someone tries to live stream it. The Wi-Fi dies. Now, if you think you're safe because you live in a basement in Kansas with a well-stocked snack pantry, I hate to break it to you. It's not just the lava. It's the ash. Volcanic ash isn't some poetic snowfall from hell. It's glass. Microscopic, inhalable glass. Within hours, air quality collapses globally. Lungs start to ache. Animals flee in every direction, which is tough when all directions are also on fire. Birds fall from the sky. And the sun? That friendly ball of warmth? Covered. Blocked out. Shunned by a planet that's chosen violence. Temperatures begin to drop. Fast. What the climate scientists refer to politely as a volcanic winter kicks in, which is a cute phrase for the sun just got canceled. Crops fail. Photosynthesis ghosts us. Supermarkets go from fully stocked to Mad Max in about 12 hours. Banana prices hit $800 before vanishing entirely. Meanwhile, back at ground zero, or, more accurately, the thousands of ground zeros, the Earth's tectonic stress has turned into a full-blown tantrum. Earthquakes break out like acne across fault lines from San Andreas to the Himalayas. Tsunamis follow, whipped up by underwater eruptions and collapsing island volcanoes. Coastal cities barely have time to scream. The ocean doesn't recede dramatically like in the movies. It just rises, quickly, and doesn't ask permission. And in this nightmare landscape, humanity begins its most noble, most ancient response to planetary catastrophe, blaming each other. Social media, assuming it still functions between ash clouds and EMPs from geomagnetic anomalies, becomes a theater of finger-pointing. Some say this is the result of climate change. Others call it divine punishment. One guy in Nebraska claims it's the lizard people under Mount Etna finally activating their doomsday protocol. Governments scramble. What's left of them? Emergency broadcasts loop endlessly, saying everything is fine, just stay indoors and try not to breathe. Scientists argue live on TV while their labs are being swallowed by lava. Billionaires escape to their secret bunkers in New Zealand, only to discover New Zealand is also on fire. It's a true equalizer. Volcanoes don't care about your net worth. And still, the volcanoes rage. It's not just iconic ones like Age of Geological or Etna, or that one in Hawaii with a deceptively gentle-sounding name. It's every obscure caldera, every forgotten vent at the bottom of the sea. The whole planet's geological plumbing has burst. Magma shoots from ocean floors, boiling sea creatures alive and turning vast stretches of water into steaming graveyards. Islands rise overnight, then crumble back into the waves. And the CO2? Oh, it's not just the ash choking us. It's the greenhouse gases piling up like receipts from a bad shopping spree. We're not just entering volcanic winter, we're accelerating into climate roulette. In the middle of all this, one brave soul somewhere still tries to finish their coffee, because humans are weirdly resilient like that. A barista in Portland makes what may be the last latte on Earth. Someone in Italy records the last opera sung by candlelight. Children draw pictures of volcanoes not as threats, but as monsters or dragons, because sometimes imagination protects more than fact. But let's not get too poetic. The reality is this: we are in a global pressure cooker, and we don't know who turned the dial. So here we are. Earth has popped its top, the sky is falling in flakes of fire, and humanity is scrambling for breath in a world that suddenly remembered it's a living, boiling rock with trust issues. And we've only just begun. Somewhere beneath the thickening cloud cover, now a patchwork of ash, sulfur dioxide, and existential despair, people start doing what they always do during extinction-class events. They make up weird rules. In Berlin, a group of artists forms a society that only eats food cooked by volcanic heat. In California, someone starts selling lava-proof yoga mats. Over in Tokyo, a vending machine appears that dispenses canned air. It sells out in 2 hours. But beyond the novelty, the world is in survival mode. The global temperature has dropped nearly 5 degrees Celsius in just a matter of weeks. That might not sound like much until you realize that it only took 5 degrees to plunge us into the last ice age. Welcome to a new climate, one with zero consent and no exit plan. Let's take a moment to acknowledge what's happening in agriculture, shall we? Because plants, as it turns out, are a bit picky about having sunlight. And now the sun looks like it's trying out for a noir film. Ash in the sky blocks photosynthesis. Crops fail en masse. Wheat? Gone. Corn? Forget it. Rice? Only if you like it pre-charred. What's left? Mushrooms. So many mushrooms. It's a mycological utopia. Vegans rejoice for a moment, until the mushrooms become sentient. Just kidding. Probably. Livestock suffers next. Not just because of the food shortage, but because breathing in ash-filled air is not a great lifestyle choice for cows. Milk production collapses. Cheese becomes rarer than diamonds. A single wheel of Gouda sells for the price of a sports car. The black market rises, led by underground cheese cartels, because of course it does. The oceans, meanwhile, are boiling in places and freezing in others. Ocean currents lose their rhythm. Coral reefs, what's left of them, throw in the towel. Fish migrate en masse, confused, desperate, sometimes literally jumping on ashore because they can't tell which way is up anymore. Fishermen weep. Sushi chefs mourn. The food chain goes sideways. In the cities, things aren't much better. Ash clogs everything. Power grids fail not from cyber attacks, but because they can't function under half a meter of volcanic dust. Solar panels? Useless. Wind turbines? Choked. Hydropower? Try running a dam when your rivers are full of dead salmon and lava foam. People return to candles and firewood and suddenly realize why their ancestors died at 32. Governments, still pretending to function, begin rationing. Not food, not medicine, oxygen. In places like Delhi and Sao Paulo, oxygen bars spring up like post-apocalyptic Starbucks. Instead of espresso, you get 30 minutes of unfiltered air for the price of your dignity. Black market oxygen tanks become status symbols. A-list celebrities tweet photos with their designer air tanks while hashtagging #blessed. Meanwhile, diplomacy collapses faster than a souffle in a sinkhole. The United Nations tries to convene a global summit, but nobody can fly. The Zoom call is hosted by a guy in Norway wearing ski goggles and a scarf indoors. China blames the US. The US blames Iceland. Iceland points to geological reality and shrugs. The Pope gives a sermon entirely through interpretive smoke signals. And then there's the problem of people. 8 billion of them, now trying to migrate all at once. Cities near volcanoes? Evacuated. Coastal areas vulnerable to tsunami? Gone. Island nations? Mostly underwater or uninhabitable. The great inland migration begins. Borders tighten. Tensions rise. Hungary builds a wall out of concrete and melted Lego. Australia declares itself full. Canada considers annexing Vermont for more farmland, and Vermont barely notices because they're too busy building greenhouses underground. But let's not forget the real showstoppers, the supervolcanoes. Yes, all volcanoes erupted, but not all are equal. Yellowstone, Campi Phlegraei, Toba. These aren't your average cone-shaped Instagram backdrops. These are the megafauna of volcanism. And when they blow, they don't just ruin a country. They rewrite geologic history. Ash from Yellowstone coats half of North America. Toba blackens the skies over the Indian Ocean and plunges South Asia into darkness. Campi Phlegraei takes out southern Italy with such dramatic flair. Even Pompeii looks restrained in comparison. Volcanologists go from niche nerds to the new oracles of the apocalypse. The world hangs on their every word, until they admit they don't really know what's going on either. One of them starts live streaming updates with hand puppets just to keep people calm. It works. Sort of. And amid all this geological bedlam, the Earth begins to tilt. Not metaphorically, literally. The sheer redistribution of magma and shifting tectonic plates causes minor adjustments to Earth's axis. Days grow shorter by a few milliseconds. Seasons wobble. Astronomers lose sleep. Someone at NASA quietly asks if the moon still loves us. Somewhere, someone still insists this is all part of a natural cycle. Earth does this every now and then, they say, while standing ankle-deep in lava and chewing on irradiated kale chips. We just have to ride it out. Meanwhile, another influencer launches a new lifestyle brand called Volcanesthetic, built around embracing the end of the world while still looking good in leather and ash-resistant eyeliner. But the most haunting thing isn't the lava or the ash or the cold or the panic. It's the sound. Because when every volcano erupts, the world doesn't go silent. It howls. The earth groans like a wounded animal. The wind hisses with toxic particles. The sky growls. And in the distance, if you listen carefully, you can hear the rumble of something deeper. Not just magma, not just pressure, something else, something waking up. At first, seismologists thought it was a glitch. Their instruments, already overwhelmed by global volcanic activity, began registering a new kind of tremor. Not localized, not erratic, rhythmic, pulsing, as if the Earth's crust had a heartbeat. One researcher in Chile called it a drumbeat from the core. Another, less poetic but more caffeinated, simply screamed, "What the hell is that?" before his lab was swallowed by a fissure. Because that's the thing, we weren't just dealing with surface eruptions anymore. The pressure wasn't letting up. In fact, it was increasing. The theory is simple. If every volcano erupts at once, the usual pressure release valve system breaks. The Earth isn't gently bleeding lava to stay cool. It's hemorrhaging magma in every direction. It's geological internal bleeding. And the worst part? No one knows how long it lasts. Days, weeks, centuries. We didn't plan for this. We barely planned for 2 consecutive rainy days. But as magma continues to churn and tectonic plates flex like angry yoga instructors, new mountain ranges begin to rise. Not over millennia, but in weeks. The Alps gain a few extra 100 meters. A new volcanic island emerges off the coast of Scotland and is immediately claimed by 5 different countries, none of which actually want it. The Sahara, once dry, now sports a lava river that glows like a neon scar. Cartographers give up. GPS devices say, "Are you serious?" and shut down. And yet, humans, being humans, keep adapting. In Alaska, former ice fissures become lava fissures, trying to cook salmon over magma vents. In Germany, beer companies begin brewing with geothermal heat. In Brazil, carnival continues anyway, now with ash masks and lava-proof floats. We may be doomed, but we will not go quietly. We will go flamboyantly. But while the surface turns into a smoldering obstacle course, the oceans start plotting their own betrayal. You see, all those undersea volcanoes we like to forget about, they didn't forget about us. When they erupt, they don't just spew magma, they superheat entire regions of water. This creates something scientists refer to as megaboils. Imagine the Pacific as a kettle. Now imagine someone turned it to max and snapped off the knob. Marine ecosystems collapse in a spectacular fashion. Fish flee the boiling zones only to end up in the dead zones created by surface ash. Whales beach themselves en masse, confused and suffocating. Coral reefs bleach, burn, and finally disintegrate. The ocean, that ancient cradle of life, becomes a soup of steam, death, and regret. And guess what happens to all that superheated water? It rises, evaporates, joins the atmosphere. And what does an ash-filled, CO2-rich, moisture-heavy atmosphere do best? It storms. Not normal storms. Biblical ones. Monsoons on steroids. Thunderclouds blacker than sin. Lightning that doesn't fork, it carpets. Entire cities vanish under freak floods. Rivers reverse course. New ones are born. In London, the Thames overflows and merges with the underground, creating the world's first lava-fed water park. Admission is free. Survival is not. At this point, global infrastructure reaches what scientists technically describe as completely boned. Roads crack, bridges collapse, airports melt, and satellites? Well, they're still up there, but ash clouds mess with their signals. The International Space Station tries to help, sending weather updates, but then they catch sight of Earth's surface and collectively decide not to come back. The only working technology is old school. Analog radios, paper maps, bicycles, typewriters. Suddenly, your grandma's refusal to get rid of her 1974 ham radio rig makes her the most connected person in the neighborhood. Teenagers gather around her garage like disciples, wide-eyed, whispering. She can talk to Argentina. Meanwhile, in bunkers, high-altitude labs, and wine cellars turn command centers, the world's remaining experts scramble to figure out how this ends. Some propose radical geoengineering, cooling the planet by detonating nuclear bombs in the atmosphere to bounce sunlight back. Because if there's anything this situation needs, it's more explosions. Others suggest building floating arcologies, self-sustaining cities that drift atop rising seas. Japan begins construction immediately, but halfway through, a new island rises underneath them, capsizing the whole structure like Poseidon rejecting a birthday gift. The religious communities are, of course, divided. Some see it as judgment. Others see it as purification. A rogue sect in Utah starts baptizing people in lava. It doesn't go well. In Rome, the Vatican declares a theological ceasefire and begins printing solar-powered rosaries. And through it all, the volcanoes don't stop. They just change. Some begin to pulse in coordinated patterns, as if syncing to some internal metronome. One researcher notices that every 24 hours, all eruptions worldwide dim for exactly 8 seconds. A pause, a breath, as if the planet is thinking. Thinking about what? No one knows. But one thing is clear. Whatever Earth started when it blew its top, it's not done. By now, most of the global population has accepted that life as we knew it is gone. Cities are tombs of ash and molten concrete. Nations are vague concepts people refer to nostalgically, like dial-up internet or salad bars. The new units of civilization are survival pockets, underground communes, seafaring barges, abandoned malls repurposed into fortified mushroom farms. Welcome to Earth, the DIY edition. In Greenland, ironically one of the last relatively stable land masses, a group of scientists turned refugees create the first global volcanic activity archive. Handwritten, stored on waterproof goat hide, because digital media has the lifespan of a gnat in lava. They call themselves the Scorchivists. Their logo, a globe on fire with a thumbs up. Meanwhile, the animal kingdom is undergoing its own version of freaked-out Darwinism. Species are mutating faster than scientists can name them. Heat-resistant ants the size of thimbles begin building colonies in cooled lava tubes. Birds abandon traditional migration routes and instead circle the globe in endless, confused loops like anxious airline passengers. And deep in the Pacific, a jellyfish evolves the ability to glow through ash clouds, attracting both food and terrified scientists in submersibles who immediately regret their career choices. And what of humanity's leadership? Good question. The last remaining superpower is now a floating alliance of billionaires on mega-yachts, tethered together in international waters like a nautical version of the G7, only with more champagne and less credibility. They communicate through encrypted fish emojis and have voted to establish a new currency, lava coin. Its value is measured by the temperature of magma samples. Surprisingly, it performs better than the euro. In an abandoned missile silo beneath Nebraska, a small band of climate scientists and failed influencers tries to reboot democracy by holding elections every Tuesday. No one votes, but the ballots are beautifully illustrated. Their leader is a man named Kevin, chosen solely because he has access to a working toaster and an above-average sense of direction. Amid this barely controlled chaos, strange phenomena begin emerging around major volcano clusters. Lights, not fire, not lightning, something different. Some say it's geothermal plasma. Others say it's Earth releasing magnetic energy after centuries of tectonic constipation. One woman on TikTok insists it's the birth of a planetary consciousness. She's immediately followed by 12 million people, a brand deal with a deodorant company, and an invitation to speak at the first post-apocalypse TEDx event, held inside a hollowed-out glacier. But the real showstopper comes when, for the first time since the event began, a volcano stops erupting. Mount Erebus in Antarctica, previously spewing lava like it had a vendetta against penguins, suddenly quiets. No smoke, no ash, just stillness. A few days later, another goes silent, Mount Aso in Japan. Then another, and another. A cautious optimism begins to spread. Maybe the worst is over. Maybe Earth's tantrum is winding down. Naturally, humanity reacts by immediately planning a comeback. An emergency summit is held in what remains of Switzerland, now a mix of spa resorts and ash bunkers. Scientists, survivors, warlords, and surprisingly well-dressed diplomats gather to discuss Project Restart, a global initiative to rebuild civilization smarter, cleaner, and ideally farther away from literal geological murder holes. Ideas fly. Underground cities, floating greenhouses, magma-powered factories, even a volcano embassy to negotiate with Earth itself, because at this point, why not? Someone proposes sending a robot into the mantle to apologize on behalf of humanity. It's unclear if they're joking. But then, just as this fragile hope begins to glow like a candle in a sulfur storm, something changes. The silence of the dormant volcanoes is broken, not by eruption, but by sound. Low frequency, deep, repeating. It's not seismic, not tectonic. It's measured, patterned, like Morse code tapped out by a planet. Every seismograph still functioning captures the same beat. For pulses, pause. For more, some interpret it as a natural coincidence. Others believe Earth is speaking. A rogue group of linguists, cultists, and former advertising executives form the Earth Listening Institute. They claim the planet is sending a message. Their translation? I'm not done. And indeed, 1 week later, a new volcano rises in central Australia, a place that hasn't had one in millions of years. It erupts not with magma, but with a thick, golden gas that smells faintly of petrichor and burnt copper. It glows at night. Birds fly toward it and never return. Drones scent and lose signal. The news cycle explodes with theories. Aliens. Hollow Earth. Earth rebooting itself. Someone suggests it's the beginning of a new geological epoch. They call it the Anthropocene, the age of human-induced ignition. And somewhere, in a crater not yet mapped, a small green sprout pushes through the ash. Because Earth may be furious, but it also remembers how to start over. The sprout becomes a symbol. Someone snaps a photo before their camera melts, capturing that tiny streak of green defying a world choked in ash. Within a week, it's plastered everywhere from ruined billboards to makeshift flags sewn from old t-shirts and hazmat suits. Survivors start calling it the first leaf, which sounds like a cult, but is really just the closest thing to hope anyone's seen since the atmosphere turned into a barbecue pit. But don't get too sentimental. Because while one part of the world is busy composing haikus about rebirth, another part is falling into absolute, unfiltered madness. A network of isolated island communities, cut off for months by tsunami damage and ashfall, declares itself the volcanic kingdom. They communicate entirely through smoke signals, worship tectonic plates, and believe magma is divine blood. Honestly, considering the circumstances, it's not the worst religion to come out of this. Meanwhile, over in what used to be Silicon Valley, a group of surviving techies launches a new operating system called Lavos, short for lava-optimized survivalware. It includes ash-resistant communication protocols, facial recognition based on soot patterns, and the world's first cryptocurrency mined exclusively by geothermal vents. Naturally, the logo is a frowning volcano wearing sunglasses. But even these attempts at progress are fragile. Because Earth isn't just reacting, it's adapting. And the volcanoes, those mouthpieces of planetary rage, begin to show coordination. Not random outbursts, not geological hiccups, patterns. Volcanoes erupt in sequence now, almost like dominoes with perfect timing. Across continents, eruptions are spaced in such a way that the resulting atmospheric disruptions amplify each other. One geophysicist likens it to Earth learning how to play itself like an instrument. She calls it planetary harmonics. Her colleagues call it a terrible time to be alive. Then comes the Red Sky Week. It begins with a simple shift, ash particles mixing with new elements from the Australian anomaly. The skies turn a rich crimson across half the globe. People wake up to light that looks like a horror film filter. Plants that had just begun sprouting twist into odd, symmetrical shapes. Animals migrate in perfect concentric circles, as if following invisible instructions. Night doesn't fall, just darkens into burgundy. Religious texts are dusted off and reinterpreted with volcanic footnotes. The Book of Revelation is now sold with a heat-resistant cover. Children's bedtime stories include chapters titled How Not to Step on Lava and Why the Ground is Angry Today. Yet through it all, something even stranger happens. People begin to stabilize. Not in the pre-apocalypse sense, but something resembling a new baseline. Ash filter helmets become fashion. Volcanic zones are given Yelp reviews. Hot, aggressive, great view. Would not recommend for picnics. Nomadic communities sprout up, following eruption calendars like ancient farmers once followed the moon. Scientists start carrying swords, because in this new world, research is peer-reviewed and weaponized. In one mountain valley untouched by lava, a group of engineers finishes building the first geothermal-powered amphitheater. There, for the first time in years, music returns. A violinist plays a solo beneath an aurora of volcanic light. The audience weeps, not from emotion, but from sulfuric irritation, but the feeling is mutual. Elsewhere, a team of ex-astronomers, bored of the whole space is safe narrative, refocus their telescopes inward. Not at the stars, but at Earth's heat signatures. What they find isn't comforting. Beneath the crust, across 3 continents, there are signs of movement. Not magma, not tectonic, something else. The readings pulse in a spiral pattern. One analyst describes it as the planet knitting something. Then, unprompted, the Earth's magnetic field wobbles. Just a little. Just enough to mess with compasses and send migratory birds into IKEA showrooms. Just enough for all the auroras to turn blood orange. And just enough to raise one terrifying question. What if the volcanoes were just phase 1? This question reaches the last surviving network news anchor, who has been broadcasting solo from a bunker in Finland for 6 months. In his final episode, he signs off with, "And in local news, we may be living inside a sentient furnace. Good night, and remember, don't lick the ash." And still, that green sprout grows. Because even when Earth burns, it occasionally leaves room for a bloom. By now, most people don't call it Earth anymore. They call it the stove, or Maltinia, or that angry rock. Some call it home, with a nervous laugh, while others just grunt and keep walking through ash drifts that bury abandoned cars like time capsules of pre-meltdown optimism. Language itself begins to shift. Hot no longer means sexy. Lit refers exclusively to objects on fire. The phrase, under pressure, is banned from conversation unless you are literally standing on a magma vent, in which case you're allowed one scream and a single pun. Children born after the eruptions are called ashlings. Their lullabies are full of lava metaphors. Their games involve dodging falling soot and collecting rare minerals. Their favorite fairy tale? The girl who walked on fire and didn't cry. Meanwhile, the science community is torn. One faction, known as the magmatists, believes the planet is entering a new state of equilibrium, that all this fury is just Earth resetting the vibe. Another group, less optimistic, calls themselves the Downward Thermodynamics Coalition and believes the planet is dying one flamboyant tantrum at a time. Both sides agree on one thing. Something under the surface is definitely organizing. Because remember those rhythmic pulses? They've evolved. What used to be irregular seismic chatter is now structured. Regular. Patterned. Some bright spark runs the data through a sound synthesizer and discovers that, when sped up, the Earth is playing what sounds suspiciously like a bass line. Yes, the planet is now beatboxing. Some believe it's communication. Others think it's a cry for help. A few believe it's music and immediately form the world's first geothermal rave. Held on a lava plateau in Iceland, the party ends with 300 attendees being gently roasted and a viral dance trend called the mantle shuffle. Elsewhere, deep within a Himalayan cavern, monks who have been meditating through the chaos emerge and say, "We told you this would happen." Then they go back inside, locking the cave with a combination lock made entirely of melted iPhones. Geopolitics, meanwhile, has dissolved into a game of territorial lava hopscotch. Instead of fighting over oil or gold, nations now skirmish for access to breathable valleys and functioning water condensers. The UN, now reduced to a council of 5 mildly dehydrated representatives and a goat named Ban Ki-moon, proposes a new global treaty, the Accord of Not Making Things Worse. No one signs it, but they all nod politely. And let's not forget the volcanoes themselves. They've started exhibiting preferences. Certain volcanoes stop erupting entirely, while others double down. One in Chile begins spewing obsidian in perfectly shaped cubes. A Hawaiian caldera launches molten rock that cools mid-air into spheres, smooth, polished, eerily uniform. Volcanologists start whispering that the volcanoes are becoming intentional. Intelligent? Maybe not. But expressive? Oh yes. One lava field in Kenya begins emitting complex spiral patterns. Drones sent to study it melt. The spirals expand weakly, like messages written by the crust itself. The only person bold enough to interpret them is an out-of-work tattoo artist named Carl, who claims the volcanoes are channeling sacred ink energy. He's ignored until one of his sketches matches a lava flow exactly. He becomes a prophet overnight. His sermons are delivered via smoke signal and Instagram stories. The Earth, it seems, is no longer just erupting. It's creating, and not just patterns, but structures. That's right, natural magma formations that resemble intentional architecture. Arches, pillars, a perfect circle of basalt columns in the Canadian wilderness that hums when the wind hits it just right. Some call it a temple, others call it a geothermal migraine. Either way, people gather, chant, and leave offerings. Obsidian beads, poetry, even a lava lamp filled with real lava do not shake. Scientists attempt to understand this emergence of geologic art. Some suggest that Earth, under immense pressure and centuries of abuse, has entered a new expressive phase, like a teenager discovering interpretive dance. Others believe the planet is not just venting, but evolving, that the volcanoes are transitioning from natural disaster to geological language. And in the middle of this molten rebirth, a single message appears across multiple volcanoes, formed in lava rock, visible from the air, and translated by a dozen teams working in 4 languages. Breathe different, cryptic, haunting, vaguely corporate. But one thing's for sure, Earth is no longer just a setting. It's a character, and it has something to say, whether we're ready to listen, or just end up as well-done toast on the crusty edge of its next exhale, is still up for debate. After Breathe Different appears carved into volcanic rock across 5 continents, the human species collectively panics in 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, denial. Surely it's pareidolia, right? That thing where we see faces in clouds and monsters in wallpaper patterns. Except this time it's symmetrical block lettering made of cooling lava, 20 meters tall and readable from space. So, maybe not. Phase 2, capitalism. A clothing company trademarks the phrase and sells breathable biofiber suits with the slogan embroidered across the chest. Influencers pose in ash-dusted landscapes pretending to meditate while tagging #BreatheDifferent and #CrustCore. The CEO does a press tour in a magma-powered hovercraft and says they're empowering the Earth to express itself through fashion. Phase 3, existential collapse. Because deep down, everyone knows this isn't just a metaphor anymore. The planet is talking, and it's not whispering, it's branding. Somewhere in what's left of Patagonia, a rogue AI theorist live streams from a bunker built entirely out of volcanic glass. His thesis? Earth has become self-aware, not through magic or myth, but sheer computational chaos. The crust, core, and mantle now function as an accidental superorganism, like a planetary-scale quantum processor run on pressure, heat, and raw tectonic data. In other words, Earth isn't just active, it's online. Naturally, he's mocked. Until the volcanoes start syncing with the Schumann resonances, the electromagnetic pulses that circle the Earth. You know, the heartbeat of the planet. They've always been there, but now they match eruption cycles. Like rhythm, like code. Suddenly, everyone wants to know, if Earth is intelligent now, what does it want? Back in what used to be the Midwest, a survivalist commune builds a listening chamber, a hollowed-out limestone dome filled with tuning forks and hope. Their leader, a woman named Denise who used to be an accountant, insists she can hear the crust breathing. She gives weekly sermons titled The Gospel of Igneous Intent. Her followers eat only food cooked over open lava. Ironically, they're very chill people. Meanwhile, in what remains of academic society, teams begin cataloging volcanic expressions. They publish the first edition of the Crust Codex, a 900-page manual of lava patterns, eruption rhythms, gas compositions, and their possible meanings. Chapter titles include ash as allegory, scream vents and semiotics, and did the caldera just wink? And still, new volcanoes keep appearing. Not erupting, forming. Some rise from fault lines never previously active. Others appear without warning, growing in perfectly circular formations, like blisters on the Earth's crust. Their placement begins to form a pattern, a global ring, a symbol, once completed, visible only from high orbit, resembling a mandala made of scars and flame. It's at this point that humanity collectively freaks out and launches Project Skyscream, a desperate attempt to communicate back. The idea? Detonate a series of atmospheric sonic pulses encoded with binary phrases from massive balloon arrays stationed above the clouds. It's a sort of Morse code for Mother Earth, assuming she hasn't already blocked our number. The first message is simple: we hear you. The response is seismic. All over the world, volcanoes vibrate, but not violently. They hum. A tone, deep and resonant, spreads through the crust. It's felt in floors, walls, bones. Babies stop crying. Dogs tilt their heads. A man in Poland faints while holding a cactus and wakes up speaking fluent Basque. In some places, magma flows form temporary glyphs, shapes that dissolve before drones can photograph them. But one phrase endures, etched into a lava plateau in southern Africa, visible for exactly 2 hours before a dust storm erases it. Too late to fix. Time to change. Interpretations fly. Some see doom. Others see instruction. A minority of very enthusiastic YouTubers see it as a pitch for a new cryptocurrency. But the dominant theory is this: Earth isn't mad. It's evolving, and it expects us to catch up or get left behind. Suddenly, Earth-friendly initiatives take on a very different tone. Not just about saving polar bears or reducing single-use plastic. Now it's about appeasing a sentient ball of magma who has opinions on carbon emissions. Renewable energy is no longer a choice. It's a survival tactic. Lava-cooled data centers are built inside dormant craters. A volcano in Iceland is declared a citizen and granted voting rights in the new Continental Assembly. Its representatives are geologists wearing heavy gloves and emotional damage. And as the temperature continues to flux, the ash continues to fall, and the crust continues to murmur, humanity faces the most critical question of all. What if the Earth doesn't want us to go extinct? What if it wants us to change species? Change species? At first, the phrase is dismissed as metaphoric. Poetic nonsense muttered by lava-drunk philosophers and barefoot ecologists chewing on fermented moss. But then, reports start trickling in, from places too remote, too dangerous, too molten to fake. People are adapting. A woman in Java survives a pyroclastic flow by diving into it. She emerges hours later, skin singed but unbroken, eyes glowing faintly red, heartbeat slow and deep like a drum roll. In Peru, a child born underground develops lungs capable of filtering sulfur. In Siberia, a teenager's body temperature rises to 45 degrees Celsius without symptoms. When asked how he feels, he just shrugs and says, "Cozy." Scientists are baffled. Governments panic. A new field emerges: volvobiology, the study of volcanic life adaptation. Its leading figures are half zoologists, half therapists, all permanently ash-dusted. They document a sudden surge in genetic anomalies, none of them immediately fatal, all of them trending toward one common trait: resilience to fire. Nature, it seems, is skipping the slow lane. Forget natural selection. This is crisis evolution. And humanity is splitting. On one side, the Thermosians, those showing early signs of mutation, whether by biology or sheer exposure. They develop higher heat tolerance, infrared vision, and in rare cases, a strange affinity for basalt. On the other side, the Paleoclasts, those clinging to what they call classic humanity, rejecting what they see as forced metamorphosis. Their slogan, "We didn't ask to be toasted." Tensions rise, predictably. Some Thermosians begin forming communes near active craters, claiming the volcanoes feel like home. One group in New Zealand builds a temple entirely out of cooled lava glass, calling it the Shrine of Becoming. It's part yoga studio, part forge, part ominous drum circle. Their welcome mat says, "Evolve or sizzle." Meanwhile, the Paleoclasts barricade themselves inside refrigerated bunkers, eating canned peaches and quoting 20th century philosophy. They hold mock trials for geothermal sympathizers and burn effigies made of old solar panels. Their children are taught that volcanoes are angry caves, and that magma is the blood of punishment. And then, out of nowhere, something unexpected occurs. A volcano laughs. Mount Etna, to be specific. During a late-night eruption, seismic instruments pick up a clear pattern, a rhythmic distortion in the tremor waves that, when filtered through frequency isolation software, resembles laughter. Not metaphorical laughter. Real, honest-to-God chuckling. Deep, ancient, terrifying. Like the Earth heard a joke it waited eons to finally understand. The world stops. Paleoclasts declare it the end. Thermosians call it a welcome. Psychics say it's the sound of Gaia waking up and realizing she left the oven on. The UN, now operating from a floating ice platform with a surprisingly functional espresso bar, drafts an open message. To whom it may concern, volcanic entity, or other we acknowledge receipt of laughter. Please clarify intent. There is no response. Only more lava. But the mutations accelerate. People in volcanic zones begin sleeping less, seeing farther, hearing through solid rock. A man in Iceland claims he can feel tectonic tension like muscle cramps in the soles of his feet. A woman in Kenya can predict eruptions to the minute. In Alaska, a community of miners now sees in thermographic color, their irises glowing orange like warning lights. And then the dreams start. Thousands report identical visions, walking through vast magma caverns beneath the crust, following glowing veins of light, hearing voices, not human, not alien, but earthly. Voices that say things like, carbon was a cocoon, oxygen was a phase, heat is the mother tongue. Interpretations abound. Cults explode in number and variety. A group in Romania begins ritual lava bathing. In Nevada, a man constructs an entire church shaped like a magma chamber and calls himself Pastor Thermos. He holds sermons where the congregation sits in saunas and listens to volcanic rock samples sing. Spotify refuses to host the recordings due to fire risk. And yet, not everything is chaos. In pockets of this scorched, shifting world, something unexpected happens. Harmony. In the remains of Seoul, a hybrid community of humans and Thermosians begins building an open-air city with structures shaped to channel geothermal vents. They grow fungus, synthesize heat-tolerant algae, and dance at night to the tremors beneath their feet. There are no politicians, just engineers and translators, people who speak both language and lava. They call it Calderon, the first city of the new Earth. Not everyone believes it will last, but for now it glows. And beneath it all, the Earth pulses as if watching, as if waiting. Deep below Calderon, past the fungal farms, the tremor-sensitive schools, the lava-heated community spas, lies something no one can explain. A chamber, natural but not accidental, carved not by tools but by pressure, by time, by something that knew exactly where to push. Its walls are smooth, black, veined with glowing threads of crystalline magma that hum like a tuning fork submerged in memory. The chamber emits no heat, only resonance. Those who enter report visions, fractals of time, of tectonic cycles, of species long extinct and those yet to exist. One visitor sees the entire Mesozoic era play backward, ending with a single drop of magma blinking like an eye. Another sees their own birth as a spark inside a fault line, Scientists refuse to call it a consciousness. Religious leaders call it the heart. Thermosians call it the invitation. The paleoclasts call it a trap. But it doesn't matter what anyone calls it, because the Earth keeps changing, and now it's accelerating. Volcanoes no longer erupt indiscriminately. They pulse. They grow taller, more structured. Lava flows organize into terraces, into loops, into what one terrified geologist calls geometric grammar. From space, satellite feeds reveal a network, interlinked magma routes crisscrossing the planet like veins, pulsing in synchronous beats. One physicist, chain-smoking and wide-eyed, whispers, "It's building something. And it's not just the land. The skies shift next. Ash particles combine with charged ions from the upper atmosphere to form something new. Not quite solid, not quite vapor. A field, a membrane, a dome of shimmering plasma slowly encircling the globe, visible only at dawn and dusk. The first to see it calls it the crust halo. Within days, the phenomenon is everywhere. Theories abound. Is it shielding us? Trapping us? Or transforming us? Communication with satellites becomes erratic. GPS fails entirely. Radio signals bounce strangely, as if Earth is selectively choosing what to allow through. Some believe the planet is creating an immune system, filtering out noise, chaos, even language it deems unhelpful. In response, a small group of linguists and Thermosian monks develop geospeech, a new language based on seismic rhythms, harmonic humming, and magma flow mimicry. It's not spoken, it's vibrated. Conversations last hours. Arguments cause mild earthquakes. Poetry can cause landslides. Their first phrase decoded from deep crustal resonance. What burns survives. And perhaps it's true. Because amid this molten evolution, pockets of life adapt in stunning, terrifying ways. Trees in the Amazon regrow with fire-resistant bark and roots that siphon heat instead of water. Desert beetles develop reflective shells that mirror volcanic light to blind predators. Birds begin nesting in cooled lava vents, feeding their chicks bioluminescent worms that glow like embers. Human biology continues its weird pirouette. Thermosians now exhibit increased bone density, organ redundancy, and an inexplicable ability to sense magnetic shifts. One girl is born with a second heart that only beats when volcanoes do. She's studied, revered, and eventually left alone because she starts predicting eruptions in rhyme. In Antarctica, long thought dead, Mount Erebus reactivates, gently, not with destruction, but with rhythm. It hums a deep chord that spreads through the ice shelf. Cracks form, but not randomly, in spirals. Melting accelerates, then halts, then reverses. Glaciers shift course like living things changing their minds. Beneath the ice, sensors detect heat patterns forming a perfect Fibonacci sequence. Earth is not just alive, it's composing. A global structure is taking form, not mechanical, not digital, but geological, organic, slow, precise. Every volcano, every eruption, every rumble has been part of a score. A planetary symphony now approaching its crescendo. And then, for the first time in what feels like forever, everything goes silent. No eruptions, no tremors, no ash, just stillness, and the breathless anticipation of something colossal about to begin. The crust halo glows, the magma pulses, and deep within the chamber beneath Calderon, the heart beats, once, just once, loud enough to crack glass in bunkers 2,000 kilometers away, loud enough to make people drop whatever they're doing, because they've all heard it now, not with ears, with bones. The Earth has spoken, and it wants an answer. For 12 hours, the world holds its breath. No lava, no tremors, no screams, just a silence so thick, it feels physical, as if the atmosphere has been pressed between tectonic palms, flattened into stillness. The crust halo intensifies, no longer a shimmer, but a dome of slow-moving light that swirls with patterns not made by wind or heat, but thought. And then, something impossible happens. The ground exhales. Every volcano on Earth simultaneously releases a single plume. Thin, straight, soundless. Not a scream, not a cough, a whisper. And from those towers of ash and steam, drifting high into the charged sky, one thing becomes clear. They're spelling something. Letters, vast and curling, visible only from space, and from the eyes of those who've learned to see the way Earth now speaks. It reads, "Become." That's it. One word. A command. An invitation. A warning. Or all three. Reactions are predictably human. The paleoclasts retreat deeper into bunkers and freeze-dry their ideologies. Some declare the word a hoax, others a misinterpretation, still others a trick of demonic sediment. But their numbers dwindle. Their oxygen thins. Their Wi-Fi dies, and no one comes to reboot the router. Meanwhile, the Thermosians rise, quietly, steadily. They begin what they call the Great Walk, migrating toward volcanic zones not as threats, but as temples. To study, to listen, to understand what it means to become with the Earth, not on it. In Calderon, the chamber opens wider. It does not collapse, nor explode. It unfolds, layers of rock peeling back like petals, revealing a core unlike anything seen before. A column of glowing magma, rotating slowly, its surface etched with a spiral that moves against gravity. It hums in frequencies below hearing, felt in the ribcage, the molars, the marrow. Those who approach feel no heat, only memory. Some fall to their knees. Others laugh. One man begins to levitate an inch off the ground before dropping and declaring, with absolute certainty, that he now understands rocks sexually. He's escorted out politely, and then the transformation begins. Not fast, not loud, but total. Earth itself starts reshaping. Not erupting, morphing. Mountains shift slightly, as though shrugging off their forms. Rivers realign. The crust thickens in some places, thins in others. New elements rise from the mantle. Glowing crystals, magnetic dust, a black stone that sings when touched. Gravity flutters like a nervous heart. Time, as measured by atomic clocks, begins to skip seconds. Not lose them, skip them, as if rewriting chronology. Human bodies change, subtly. No fangs, no wings, just ease. Breathing ash feels like breathing fog. Eyes adapt to sulfur. Bones feel less brittle. Emotions deepen. Language shortens. A simple hum replaces entire paragraphs. People communicate through vibration, gesture, shared memory. War dies, not because of peace, but because heat made bullets silly. Money dissolves. Value shifts to presence, to resonance, to what one offers the crust. Governments become irrelevant. Communities become geological, formed around thermal flows, around balance. Politics is now a function of magma proximity. Children are born who don't cry. They glow. They call themselves crustlings. They don't see the Earth as a planet. They call it mother form, a being that once burned in silence and now sings. The final message from the old world is sent from a converted research drone orbiting above the halo. It observes the planet not as a sphere of blue and green, but as a radiant being, alive, aware, and becoming. The message is short. We thought volcanoes were the danger. They were the invitation. And so Earth moves on. Not destroyed, not saved, transformed. The volcanoes? Still there, still rumbling, still speaking. But now we speak back, not in words, in warmth. And the final line, spoken by a child watching a mountain exhale, will be remembered for generations. We didn't survive the eruption. We joined it.